So today we're gonna show you how to power your video camera and something like the Tascam audio recorder with an XLR phantom power input on just one of these batteries for hours at a time. So take a look.
So today I thought I'd make this video about the ultimate G85 rig and really any camera, because obviously, you know, we love the video quality coming out of our G85, but obviously it's a camera, so the audio is not going to be very good. And we have been relying on this Tascam for our external recording, and that's worked pretty well. But this really isn't geared for use with a camera, because if you mount it like on top of the camera, for example, there's nowhere for a mic to go, or it left something to be desired. And so I actually went out, I splurged a little bit, and I got the new DR-60D Mark II. And this is really made for cameras. You can just, you can just open it right up. And I want to talk about some of the pros and the cons and how we have, I think, the perfect setup for this thing. So here we go. So this is the unit, and it has a really cool look, right? It has this kind of old school oscilloscope kind of a look. I love Tascam. I love the old one. I've been using the DR-100 Mark II. And Chris, you have the Mark III. We wanted to upgrade, and so I wanted to stay in the Tascam family, and looking around, it was either the 60D or the 70D. And there's a couple of differences. They have the same preamp, so the audio quality is gonna be pretty comparable. But the main difference is in the form factor. The 70D is shorter and wider, and this one's a little taller and narrower. But the main reason I went with the 60D is because it has all these controls right on the front. So on the 70, you'd have to dig through menus to change like levels on the two XLR inputs. But here you can just control it all right from the front. And I also think it kind of matches the form factor of the camera a little bit better, and I think would make for a really, really cool rig. So we haven't really got it fired up and tested it yet. We'll make a future video talking about the audio quality. But the reason why I think this is really, really cool is because the main drawback of this unit, and all the reviews will mention this, is that the battery life is really crappy. So for whatever reason, the Tascam units just tend to have worse battery life than like a comparable Zoom or another brand. And on this particular one, it doesn't even have like a lithium-ion battery pack. It just has room for 4 AA batteries. This would always be my problem. I wanted to be able to take my camera and have really pro audio with XLR input, pro video, and go somewhere and just shoot for 5, 6, 7, 8 hours and not worry. And if you guys watched our G85 accessories video, you know we mentioned that you can go out and get this AC adapter for your camera like this, and it just kind of takes a dummy battery and gives you the AC output. And so I had been using it for some time lapse, and whenever I can shoot and I'm not moving the camera a whole lot, I can find an AC outlet, plug it in, and it was pretty good. But the problem is that every time you have to move the camera, you're looking around for another outlet, an extension cord. It does work really well, and we definitely recommend having it in your kit, but it's not ideal for every condition. So the battery life was kind of a problem for both units. So I actually kind of thought, well, what if we tackled both of them by getting this battery bank? This is actually a USB battery bank that has 2 USB ports and control 2 devices, and it's a 20,000 milliamp hour. To put that in perspective, the Panasonic has a 1,000 milliamp hour battery, which means that this has 20 times as much juice as the one that it comes with. And because the Tascam that we want to use has the same battery life problem, well, I thought if we got one of these and we could make them both be powered from USB, that we'd be in business. And that's exactly what we did.
So let's go ahead and show you just really quickly the overview of the pieces involved in powering both your G85 or any camera for that matter with a dummy battery and something like the Tascam DR-60D Mark II audio recorder, which can handle XLR input. So let's just go over the different components. So the first thing we have is we have a dummy battery, and these are specific to each camera. These are about, I want to say they were maybe $15.
Yeah.
And it gives you a little DC jack. And it does come with a DC adapter, but we're not going to use that for this. What we are going to show you is you will have a cable. Now this cable, this is a little step up cable that goes from, because USB power is 5 volts, camera runs off of around 9 volts. So you have this step up adapter which goes from USB to this DC jack. So now we're taking 5 volts out of the battery to 9 volts, and that would plug right into here. So we now have a full end-to-end solution to go from USB to the proper voltage for the camera.
So I will say, Chris, really quick, the unit that we got actually had the, I think it was a 5.5mm barrel jack, which wouldn't fit with the camera. I actually soldered a new lead on there, but actually we'll have a link to the actual adapter you can buy, which will allow you to just take that, plug it into an adapter, and plug it into the camera. So we'll have links to all this stuff, guys. It makes it really easy.
So no soldering involved if you buy that other little adapter. We were in a hurry, so he went ahead and just soldered one on. But the point is, you'll end up with essentially USB on one end, DC on the other, going from 5 to 9 volts. Now the cameras will be powered right off of this USB battery pack. Second piece comes with the Tascam, and that's just a USB mini, so it's kind of the fatter one, but that's fine. That goes into the Tascam, and again, this piece goes right into your USB battery pack. So essentially, let's just give you an idea of how this would look. So you now have 2 cables plugged into the USB battery pack. One goes to the dummy battery of the G85, the other goes right into the Tascam. And that's pretty much it. And this battery pack, by the way, which is about $30, will power both of these for around between, let's say, 8 to 10 hours.
Which is amazing.
Pretty amazing, because the batteries that come with each of these individually will only give you maybe 1 to 2 hours at most.
And I think Tascam understood that this is something that you would probably want to do, because first of all, they don't have a rechargeable lithium ion, which my Mark II D100 did, but this will actually charge over USB. And we can kind of, you want to just fire that up and kind of see what the menu looks like?
Yeah, let's go for it. Let's plug this in.
So here we have our Tascam. We're going to plug it in via USB.
So let's turn on our camera. So,
voila.
You can see the camera is now powered up. That's a good thing. And let's go ahead and plug this into there.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time I used one of these.
Yeah, they're older style for sure.
All right, so
I'm going to wait for the DR-60D Mark III, because I always make sure you have one that's lower than mine.
Do I have a better recorder than you now?
You do. I want to get this,
we'll
but
see how long Chris will let me keep that record. So I'm gonna fire it up here. Okay. And so the first thing it tells you is that it actually asks you if you want to charge or power up via USB or battery pack.
Nice.
And it tells you that.
Bus power or storage. So we want bus power.
So you click OK, and now you're actually running the unit, and it's telling you phantom power on. Okay, sure. And now I'm running our camera and our Tascam from this battery pack, and this is freaking amazing. And here's why it's really cool.
So it has a male 1/4 inch on the top with a nice little thumb wheel that you can get to even if you don't have a lot of clearance. And it has a female 1/4 inch on the bottom. So the idea is you could get a little $5 adapter that goes in here and gives you a cold shoe. And then in theory, if you wanted this go on top of the camera, you totally could do that as well. And then the camera could be on the tripod. So it's made to go either way, which is really well thought out. I really like that.
So, you know, my goal, Chris, when I set out was I wanted to have the feel of like a pro video recording camera, right? Which has XLR input. And that's kind of what you've got now, right? So here we have our G85, it shoots 4K, and it has XLR input, and it actually has 4 channels. You can actually do a mic in and XLR. You can control your limits here on the gain in the front, and all the menus are very easily accessible. But look at this little kit, and what I'm gonna do, and I was hoping it would ship in time, but it didn't, but I wanted to have some Velcro that I can just strap the battery pack to, clean up the cables a little bit. But here we are in one little device, a really high-end pro audio and video camera. And now I can run around for 10 hours and not worry about battery life as well, which was kind of the limitation for both of these. Mirrorless cameras don't have the best battery life, and the Tascams don't have the best battery life, but this kind of solves both. And the battery pack, I paid about $32, I believe. And again, 20,000 milliamps.
Right. The other thing that's nice is even in a studio where you just want to eliminate the number of cables that are running across the floor, you could totally use this and have 0 cables running across the floor from this whole unit, and you just put in a new battery pack when you want to power up, and that could last several sessions of shooting. So let's talk about the audio and how that hooks up. So the one reason I really liked this Tascam over the DR-100 series is because with those, they do not have a specific output that will work with a camera's microphone. So here's how this will work, just the overview. The Tascam will record from the XLR inputs to its own SD card. Great, that's probably gonna be our primary audio that we sync in post. However, as a backup track or as your primary track, if you don't want to mess with that sync in post, you can run a cable like this from the output of the Tascam to the mic input of the G85 or any camera. Here's the thing, the DR100 series they don't have the right output level. So you have to get an attenuator cable. Well, they tend to be very short. Guess what? Now you have to have these two close to each other. But with the Tascam, it has a really beautiful little output, and I'm gonna show you. It is right here. So it's called camera out low. That is an input that can be used with a normal 1/8 inch or 3.5 millimeter cable. Does not need to be attenuated, and it even has a volume control so you can play with the levels. Now you can move this Tascam 10 feet, 5 feet away from your camera if you wanted to. You do not have to have an attenuator cable because those things are expensive. For a little one footer is like $30.
Right.
I just think that's brilliant, and so far, we did a little test with it and it sounds great.
If you're curious, the regular level output is here as well. So there's the high output, which you would need an attenuator cable. So it has both on
Right.
both sides. Which is
Right.
cool.
So let's just go ahead and show how
it
this
up?
would hook up.
Sure.
So essentially, you, in this cable, say we would do in the camera output low, and then on the G85, we would go into the mic input.
And I would probably recommend getting a 90-degree angle cable. That way when the screen pops out, it's not really in the way a whole lot. This actually is pretty minimal. You can still pop the screen out, it doesn't really get in the way.
Yeah, now the one thing about these Panasonics is to do that, you kind of have to move the screen out to
Right.
kind of clear everything, but it's not the end of the world. That's how it would work, and now you would be getting audio recorded to the Tascam and to the G85. Now you will have to play with the output level of the Tascam as well as possibly the input level for the microphone on the G85. And we might do another video on that. There will be a little playing around and figuring out where the right combination is of those two levels so that you get the least amount of noise with the right amount of gain. Actually, you can have 3 recordings. The Tascam has what's called a safety track. So you can record at, let's say, around -12, and then another track it records at a lower level in case there was clipping. And then the Panasonic records on its own. So you have 3 tracks ultimately at the end if you want to. So a couple of things about the Tascam that I don't personally like. The menu system is a little old-fashioned, it's a little outdated. It uses a mini USB instead of a micro USB. The case is kind of plasticky. I mean, for us it's gonna be fine, but it is a little plasticky. What about you?
I really wish it was a metal body because again, if you're gonna mount your camera on top of it and your camera's bigger or heavier and you got a bigger lens on it, you're potentially gonna be able to put a little bit of kind of stress on the chassis. To be fair, this is probably the best plastic case I've ever seen. It is really strong and sturdy. And for our G85 and our kit and our 20mm lenses or our smaller lenses, I don't see any problems, but that is something to keep in mind if you have a bigger camera. You might not want to use the top mount. Maybe you get a cage or some other mechanism to kind of mount them together without relying on that top plate. But again, I think the big one is battery life.
Let's talk about this. How much does the Tascam cost?
So the price might be the most compelling part about this entire product. It was $170 on Amazon, which is an absolute steal. And at that price, if you're kind of interested in getting something to get better audio, I would highly recommend considering the DR-60 Mark II. So the total price tag for this entire project is $170 for the Tascam. The USB step-up converter and dummy battery for your camera will probably cost you around $30 or so. And then the battery pack itself, there's a bunch of them out there. We got this 20,000 milliamp Anker, and there's quite a few of them, but ours is around $32 or so.
Overall, for the whole rig, not including the camera, but everything else, you're looking at well under $250 for what we hope will be really great audio.
Yeah.
So $250 or less, and you've got a battery-powered rig that can run your camera and your audio recorder with phantom power for anywhere from like 8 to 10 hours. It's really a great setup and great audio quality. I'm Chris.
I'm Ricky.
This is 2-Bit Da Vinci. We hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like, subscribe, and leave us any comments or questions that you have. And until next time, have a good one.